Okay, so we are now live with our webinar. First, I would like to thank all our amazing guests, and then all who are here attending to our webinar on such an important topic, which is turning great customer experience into business value. Such a relevant, such an important topic. My name is Francisco Carneiro, and I will be your host today. I'm the head of European sales here at Ivo Digital. All right, so let's get on with it. Our agenda for today will be, we're going to talk about customer experience in today's business landscape. And then we move forward to showing the value of customer experience. And then we get into the tools and methods. So at the end, we'll have question and answers. You can feel free to ask us questions in the question box here at the webinar. And then towards the end, we'll get to these questions to keep the flow going. All right, so let's start with a brief introductions round. Ian, please feel free to start.
Thank you so much, Francisco, and hello to everyone that is listening in today. It is a real pleasure to be able to be part of this webinar. My name is Ian Golding. I call myself a global customer experience specialist. I always say that I call myself that because people still don't actually believe it's a real job, but I promise you that it really is. I've been involved in the field of business improvement and customer experience for 28 years now, working as of next week in 59 countries around the world in every industry you can imagine. So whenever anyone asks me to share my perspective or opinion on the subject of customer experience, I obviously can't say no.
Sounds quite amazing. Harri, you can take from there.
Sure. It's hard to beat what Ian just said, but yes, nice to meet you all as well. And my name is Harri. I'm located here in Helsinki, Finland, and I work for a retailer called Stockmann. And I will say a few words about us later on. But yeah, my background is also heavily on different kind of customer experience related topics, human-centered design, service design, working on different industries throughout the past years. So passionate about finding ways to improve the business by understanding the value of customer experience.
Okay, thank you very much. So from our side, I would like to share a little bit about what we actually do. So we're a technology company from Finland. So Ivo is a software as a service company. We are AI-driven text analysis, converting customer contacts into customer contact intelligence. So we used to do basically text analysis, and now we have reached to this new level of innovation with customer contact intelligence. And I would also like to take the opportunity to share some fresh news from our side. We have been nominated a finalist at the National Innovation Awards in the UK. So this has been a great nomination for us. All right, so let's get to our first topic of the day, and let's talk a little bit about today's business landscape. So if we take, for example, the State of Customer Care report from McKinsey and then analyze most of the topics, we come to the conclusion that digital solutions are not really delivering to their full promise. We have a very noticeable increasing in the customer expectations. We have call volumes that are skyrocketing. We have employees leaving, getting harder to replace, decades high inflation, amongst many other things in a post-pandemic recovery scenario. So, Ian, tell me a little bit, what do you think? Is it a tough time to be on a CX team? And what are those challenges?
Well, if I were completely honest with you, Francisco, and I'm sure that Harri will completely agree with me, it's always been tough being part of a CX team. It always has been and always will be, so that will never change. What has changed and what will continue to change is the environment that we work in. One thing that is inevitable is that things change. And what that means is that from a customer experience perspective, we have to constantly be in a position to provide fact or evidence to demonstrate how constant change is impacting the customer. And as a result of that impact on the customer, the knock-on effect that will ultimately have on the financial performance of an organization, but as importantly, on the employees who are within the organization delivering the experience itself. Now, you mention a number of issues coming out of the State of CX report, all of which we know, unfortunately, far too well. But what it demonstrates is that whilst change is inevitable, what we can never quite prepare ourselves for is radical change. And what we've experienced in the last 3 years, it is so radical, no one would have predicted that we have a pandemic, followed by, well, for me especially, Brexit, followed by a global economic crisis, followed by a war. And, you know, it's not going to end there. We know it won't end there. And the thing is, unfortunately, very few organizations around the world were prepared for those things. When you think about the pandemic itself, no one was prepared for a pandemic. And within an incredibly short period of time, organizations had to adapt, not because they wanted to adapt, but because they didn't have a choice. They wouldn't exist otherwise. But what worries me about today's landscape is that what all of this radical change has unfortunately led to, whilst there are some positives, the negative is that what I'm seeing around the world across industry is that it has led to us becoming more reactive than ever before, more task focused than ever before, more short-term thinking than ever before. And ultimately, we are now more focused on hitting numbers for the success of the business to the detriment, unfortunately, of the customer experience. We are so obsessed with numbers that I think some organizations unwittingly have forgotten they even have customers. And so there is a need for us to just stop and reflect for a second, because if we just continue to focus on what's important to a business, ultimately our business will cease to be relevant in a constantly changing world. That there are many more things that I could say, Francisco, but I've probably been brutal enough so far. But I saw Harri smiling at a couple of points in that, so hopefully he won't radically disagree with me.
That is true. That is true. And as you mentioned, so aligned with that, we have this situation where budgets are quite tight. It is time to show results. So there is clearly this major push for efficiency, and in many cases, actually survival.
Yes.
And obviously, we can clearly see that this is directly connected to customer experience. And then we all know the benefits of having a great customer experience. That's right. Obviously, understanding better the competition scenario, understanding full customer potential, increasing loyalty, amongst many others. So,
but this is the dilemma, Francisco, and obviously it is a dilemma. And those working in the field of customer experience have to empathize with business leaders. You know, sometimes it's very easy to criticize a CEO. You know, why are they making us do this? But they're doing what the shareholder is demanding they do, and that's absolutely right. But I think at the moment, because we are so reactive globally, and I'm making a very bold statement about everyone. Of course, some are more proactive than others, but we're so reactive that what many organizations are looking for is that silver bullet, that really simple thing that's just it's gonna save me loads of money, you know, but it'll do what we need it to do. You know, let's adopt as much digital as we can, because we can then get rid of people. It'll cost us a lot less, and we'll be in a much better position. What that's led to, unfortunately, is the motivation for the adoption of digital, not exclusively, but largely being focused on eliminating human interaction with the focus of saving money, not improving the experience, but saving money. But what that means is that organizations are throwing digital solutions at the customer journey without knowing what the journey really looks like, and they're making it worse. Really, what leaders of organizations need to understand is that you're absolutely right, Francisco. Customer experience is as much about taking cost out as it is putting the experience in, which is a phrase that I say on a weekly basis. It's about both things. They're not mutually exclusive. But what I think many business leaders still can't get their heads around is that the best way of saving money isn't just to brutally eliminate human interaction and get rid of people. The best way to save money is to create a more efficient, effective customer experience. So many experiences being delivered today are what I call random experiences. Too many things go wrong. And because they go wrong, you've got too many people having to correct the things that go wrong over and over and over again. What we are failing to do is to stop those things from going wrong and eliminate that unnecessary activity that costs us huge amounts of money and leads to unsatisfied customers. So for me, we need leaders to recognize that there is a huge opportunity with customer experience in the current environment, not just with regards to generating revenue. Of course, ultimately, that's what we want. As you said, driving deeper, better, stronger relationships with customers over time is critical. But what is as critical as that is eliminating the things that are going wrong. We can save money by improving the experience immediately, but we have got to do it for the right reason. The right reason being the elimination of unnecessary activity that will benefit the customer and our people.
You are absolutely right. So, Harri, I have a question for you. I would like to know a little bit more. So within this context of what we have been talking, how do we make the role of customer experience work a more concrete thing within a company, so within an organization? How to show the value and the impact of customer experience? How would you see that?
Well, what Ian said about the reactive actions and proactive actions kind of resonated nicely, because of course, in a way, we have to react on daily basis, even in whatever is happening around us. But kind of the more strategic decisions shouldn't be that reactive. That should be like long-term proactive thinking. And this is what we kind of try to drive at Stockmann as well, that we clarify the responsibilities, that who is in charge of kind of following on daily basis how things are going, but then of course also to kind of at the same time prepare for the future, and as said, like to kind of not automate or minimize human interactions to do savings, because we are a premium retailer, so we kind of want to have human to human interactions where the value is created in many cases. Of course, e-com is then a little bit different case, but as said, everyone should understand their role in this whole context, and they should kind of understand the level that they are operating in, or what are they in charge of and responsible for. The kind of quicker reactions on the operative daily level, or weekly or monthly, or some short-term level, or then if you're planning something for the longer term, that should definitely be less reactive and more proactive. And let's see how different companies and industries now handle this, as Ian described, that the world is changing a little bit too quickly and radically every now and then. We would like it to be, but if that's the standard, then of course everyone has to adapt.
That is true. That is true. All right, now we can go into the more practicalities and the practical example here with our Stockmann case, and showing the value of customer experience.
Yes, I put there only a few slides, so I don't want to cause any death by PowerPoint effect, but just to kind of support the story and maybe to share some angles. But as I said, we have defined a thing called Voice of Customer program or kind of way of working at Stockmann. And our flagship store is there in the photo. So Stockmann is a Finnish 161-year-old retailer. So we have a lot of legacy and we have a history where things weren't happened that fast in the past. But of course, nowadays we have to be as agile as everyone else, and it kind of challenges the organization. But on the other hand, of course, we kind of have the heritage and loyal customers who have supported us, and we have been kind of the known and a safe player in retail for our Finnish and Baltic customers. So that has kind of course, given us an advantage in the uncertain times as well. And we have, just to say that we have 6 department stores in Finland, 1 in Estonia, and 1 in Latvia, so operating in 3 countries at the moment. And my role is being the head of customer experience and insight, which is a small team of professionals operating for all 3 markets and all channels that we are operating with. So in store, online, even with supply chain, HR. I had a meeting with HR today about the capabilities of human-centered design and human-centered thinking within the company. So we kind of talk a lot about the cultural change. And my background is in several industries, which kind of, as Ian described as well, that it gives you a nice perspective and nice understanding from different, you can kind of always take some of the learnings. And that's why I think that even if you talk about customer experience and benchmarking, you should always look outside your own industry as well, because the expectations, how things happen or should happen most often nowadays come from somewhere else. So that's maybe one learning that I have tried to share as widely as I can, that benchmark whatever kind of you find attractive and then think what you can get out of that. And there is my contact information as well. You will most likely get it after this. So please feel free to reach out in case you have any questions. But quickly about the cultural topic. So this is one way to how we have been kind of describing within the company the role of customer insight and customer experience. And I especially highlight the thought in the middle by late Ami Hassan that the customer centricity starts from customer insight and ends with customer experience. But the main thing there often is that what is in between is our ability as a company to change our way of working, our culture, because our team could offer any kind of customer insight, but if it actually doesn't lead to any real change or really new thinking in the company, then it doesn't cause the effect that we are trying to get. So no data is valuable unless it leads to some action. And why I have put some things on the left side on gray is that those are the things that we haven't been that systematic lately. So we have now kind of focused on establishing the Voice of Customer program. So we have a way of measuring our customer satisfaction, and I will share some thoughts about that in a moment. But these are, of course, the other angles that we do: consumer research and market insight research, and we utilize the staff silent information and look at the trends. But that's, to be honest, that's something that we need to be more systematic in the future. And like said earlier already, that it is not just about delighting the customers. We are, of course, running a business. We have shareholders. And we are responsible for our staff to have a profitable business, to be able to offer the jobs. So of course, all the actions should lead to kind of the nice balance between a good customer value, good business value, which I see as the kind of profitable customer experience. And if you jump to the next one, I want to kind of highlight the thing that we use to measure NPS, Net Promoter Score, as many others do as well. But now for 2 years, we actually have used another metric, which is also developed by a Finnish company called Feedbackly. And it's called Emotional Value Index. It's similar to the NPS, but we kind of felt that we need something that we can act upon more. We need something that creates us insights that we can act on that are concrete to us. And we have now really nicely been able to establish the measuring in several touch points, both offline and online. And last year we got close to 200,000 responses from these surveys, mostly from our loyal customers. So that's kind of a nice base to understand how because our loyal customers bring a rather big part of our turnover. So at the moment we feel that we do understand them quite well, and we are asking about the emotion. How did you feel about shopping or visiting or calling our customer service or receiving a package? And this data we kind of collect and analyze in a very systematic way. And one thing that I also want to highlight is that this KPI is now in everyone's kind of balanced scorecard or whatever it's called nowadays, that everyone is measured and rewarded partly based on our CX metric. And this is not the typical, based on my experience. It's usually about the profit and turnover and these kind of harder metrics. But the EVI, as we call it, is one of the three main KPIs that we use at Stockmann. If you jump to the next one, this is, I'm sorry about the small font, but there's a lot to say. So this is kind of the basic framework that we kind of are implementing in the company. So we talk about the three stages that are quite generic, talking about listening, analyzing, and acting. And our team's role is, of course, very big in the beginning when we talk about customer feedback, for example, or customer-centric development involving the customers in our development project. So we gather a lot of insight in different methods, surveys, interviews, group discussions, whatever. And of course, these automated surveys generate us a lot of insight and feedback on daily basis. So that's a really good base for us to develop our actions even further. We also want to be really open about, so we have this place called Insight Bank, where we share all the reports, summaries, findings for the whole company, unless it's somehow really NDA level stuff at this point. But most of the stuff that we do and gather, we get to share for the whole company. But then the analyze and act parts are the ones where we kind of need everyone else, because I have always said that we as a CX team can actually change very little by ourselves. We always need someone else. We need the touchpoint owners or the business owners, product owners, whatever the role is. So we analyze with them, or sometimes we analyze, of course, something first and draw the conclusions and recommendations, but then especially the action plans are created with the touchpoint owners. So, for example, I know that department stores are very active in following their own feedback and results, and then we kind of map with them these bigger trends that if some pain points are getting worse or some very, very good nice experiences are getting wider in the company. So that's why we kind of do a lot of analyzing for them and with them, but especially the act part and measuring the impact. That is something that we kind of collaborate. It's kind of nice, but also very time consuming sometimes to do something with everyone in the company. But it's super interesting for our CX team to be part of this function and be kind of making sure that this program is up and running and being developed all the time, of course, as well. And then if you show the last slide, this is kind of a short summary about the tools that we have for everyone in the company. So as said, we have several touch points where we collect the data. And then we ask this, more or less, we always ask the first question is the same about the emotion that you have, but then we have some detailed questions. And we share the info a little bit differently, and I will mention also a few case examples. So first of all, we have this kind of customer journey dashboards made with a tool called Kumul. So anyone who can access internet at Stockmann in their job can see the dashboards. We have a company level EVI score, and then we have touchpoint specific EVI scores. So that's something that is kind of the highest level of following how we are doing. Like usually NPS or some other metric is followed. So we follow EVI very closely. But then what is kind of more about the impact is these kind of unit specific feedbackly reports that we are sharing at the moment in Teams, because, for example, each department store has their own Teams group or channel, how it's called, and there they can see all the open feedback that is coming to their department store. They can filter it through categories if the cosmetics team wants to see what feedback we are getting from the cosmetics department customers or any other. And that's somehow very impactful when you bring it so close to your daily job, because I have, of course, seen these things that if they change, we have renovations happening in the store, and they are kind of usually in a way that when the renovation is happening, people are dissatisfied because they cannot find the stuff. There is noise, it's messy, but after that it gets better. So we can kind of see on like almost real time, because the feedbacks keep coming all the time, that how it's going and if we need to react to something. So this is the reactive part that is happening on the customer floor all the time. But then the more maybe hopefully proactive and a little bit longer level thinking is the third one. So now Aivo plays a big role in this. So as said, like we got like close to 200,000 responses last year with open feedback. So we don't have the resources or the capabilities even to read and analyze all of that. So of course, we now are super happy to use the AI-based tool to analyze the open feedback. And this has kind of taught us nicely to understand especially what is driving the most positive feelings, which lead to loyalty and higher average purchase and these kind of things, or what is kind of destroying the customer experience. And this helps us to understand. We have been able to allocate resources in the biggest pain points now that we have numbers and metrics from the CX point of view. So it's not like a few open feedbacks, but we kind of have very good metrics to show what is big, what is small, what is kind of growing at the moment. And afterwards, we have seen that, for example, if we have some big campaigns, the delivery times might get a little bit longer in e-com, and that causes frustration with our customers. So then we can start calculating that should we invest in the resources, sending and packing, or invest in the automation, or is it so short-term pain that it actually kind of goes away quickly? So this helps us to understand where we are succeeding, where we need to improve. And this is something that we are kind of very actively using in the company. Our CEO, I think it was this week when it came out in the Finnish kind of this newspaper, he gave an interview about how he strongly believes in the power of emotional connection in the competition in CX. So that, of course, helps our job as well when the CEO and other top management believes in the agenda that we have as well. And it's not just about the soft values, but actually we are driving the better business all the time with the findings and the projects that we are doing. So maybe this in short. I know that we have very limited time today, so let's hope we have time for discussions and questions and answers. So this was like a short recap on the voice of customer at Stockmann.
Thank you very much for the examples. It was very interesting to see how your process goes. Actually, before we get to the questions, I would like to open a little bit the discussion here for us all to. So we started with challenges, then we went a little bit through benefits, and then how the things are nowadays. Harri, thank you very much for showing the example of Stockmann and how you are building this interesting process of understanding better customer experience there. And also we are very happy to be part of this process, to be of a help there. And it's quite interesting. So in overall, as to finalize our discussion, how do you see, for example, how can we communicate better the value of customer experience to stakeholders and decision makers, for example? Like, how can we communicate better this business value of customer experience?
Shall I take that first, Harri, and then you can follow up? The reason I wanted to go first is that I just wanted to comment on you sharing your approach, because not that you need me to say what I'm about to say, but I haven't come across the emotional value index actually before. But I'm actually very pleased to hear that Feedbackly have created it, because what I teach organizations all around the world is that the thing any customer, whether it's B2B, B2C, B2G, it doesn't matter. What any customer is most likely to remember about their experience with an organization is the way the experience makes them feel. So that the fact that your CEO so strongly believes in that, and the fact that you have made the decision to base your fact based understanding of the experience on that, I think is brilliant and inspiring, and I shall tell others about it because I think others need to know. But in terms of your question, Francisco, whenever I talk about customer experience, I talk about the need for us to articulate that it is a fact-based methodology. Okay. Now, as we all know, when it comes to the subject of customer experience, there is no one way to do anything. The emotional value index being a classic example, it is one way of measuring customer perception. There are many other ways of measuring customer perception. What we also know is that when it comes to customer experience, everyone has an opinion. And some industries, those opinions are slightly more difficult to disagree with than others. But what that means is that if we don't have facts as customer experience professionals, it's very difficult to fight against opinion, because if you don't sit at the top table, no one's going to listen to you anyway. The only way we can influence leadership is to give them the facts. And when I talk about facts, I talk about the need to have a very robust way of measuring the customer experience. And what I mean by robust is a way of capturing and acting on 4 voices of measurement. And anyone that has heard me preach before will know what these are. But one of them is obviously voice of the customer. But what we must always never forget is that the voice of the employee is just as important. Now, coming back to your first question at the very beginning, the current state of CX at the moment, every year I get asked, what's the theme this year? I get asked the same thing every year. But as we moved into 2023, beyond doubt, the employee experience has become more important than ever before. It's always been important, but I think that there is a genuine need for organizations to get their heads around the facts. And again, I think Stockmann quite clearly do understand this, and so are already, I think, whether it's intentional or not, doing it anyway. But you cannot deliver great customer experiences unless you're delivering great employee experiences. So capturing voice of the employee is also important. But when I talk about voice of the employee, I don't mean employee engagement. Yes, that is important. But what I mean is, how good do our people think the experience is? We ask our customers what they think, but what about our people? I had a conversation with someone earlier who they've developed a very simple assessment, they call it, but it's a form of VOE, where they ask a number of questions, but the 2 of the questions that stick out: do you think that being a customer-centric organization is important? Okay, that's a question that they ask employees. Now, you would anticipate that most employees would say yes to that question. The second question: what proportion of your time do you spend doing it? Right, that's an interesting question. Okay, now, as a high-end luxury retailer, I would hope that a lot of Harri's colleagues would say a lot of the time. But I can tell you now, in many organizations around the world, people would have the realization that a very small proportion of their time is spent actually focusing on the customer. It's quite a chastening thing. And this is what we mean by VOE. Third voice, voice of the process. How capable are we at doing what we need to do for our customers? When we talk about trying to get leaders to understand the significance of this, they need to understand how capable our processes are at doing what customers need us to do. From an online retail perspective, how often does Stockmann deliver to the promise that they give their customers? And if you can combine that understanding of operational performance with customer perception, you can actually predict how customers are going to feel. But the fourth voice is the really critical one, because that's voice of the business. What Harri described as the hard metrics. All leaders really care about are the hard metrics, because that's what for many, that's what their bonus is paid on. That's what the shareholder cares about. What we have to demonstrate is the connection between the three customer voices, VOC, VOE, and VOP, and the impact that they're having on voice of the business. It sounds obvious, but not enough customer experience professionals are clearly making the link. And by talking about the hard metrics as another voice, it helps business leaders to get their heads around customer experience isn't something different to this. It is actually a conduit to the business achieving its strategic goals. So a very long-winded response, but I hope people found that interesting.
No worries. Harri, would like to compliment something about that.
Yeah, super good points, Ian. Thank you for those. We're writing stuff myself as well. And I fully agree, like you said, that it should be fact-based. So that's maybe the most classical thing in, I guess, any size company, that there are a lot of good ideas, a lot of opinions internally, and the decision-making is maybe too easily kind of opinion-based. We think we think we know, we are sure that we know, but when you ask for the data to back it up, it might not exist. But that's kind of how I always see it myself, that when I bring an kind of proposal or point of view to the table that is based on some customer insight or whatever data is behind it, then it's not just my opinion. I'm argumenting it based on something, and then it's kind of the facts and arguments are kind of maybe disagreeing in some moments, and then we kind of decide how to go forward. So definitely we try to minimize the amount of opinion-based decision making in the company by understanding what we need to know, what we need to learn before, because you can do a lot based on wrong assumptions, spend a lot of money. You can be very agile and very fast and very reactive, but you might accidentally focus on totally wrong topics unless you kind of have data and insight to back it up. So that's something that we are, of course, kind of developing our maturity all the time with. And the other angle that is super interesting to me personally at the moment is that now that we have this EDI data for almost 2 years, so we are now starting to analyze this kind of hard metric part, that how much does the one destroying feeling cost to us in certain touch points. If we see that in the departments, I would say that we have like 90% positive feedback and 10% negative. So I also say that this is a very good ratio, of course, to start with, but 10% of all visitors or all customers is still quite many people, even in our small markets. And if those negative feelings makes us lose turnover, decrease the loyalty, minimize the amount of visits or whatever, how much it's actually going to cost. Because as Ian said, some people want the hard euros on the table to kind of do decisions with. So this is something I'm super interested in at the moment. And my team with our data scientists is kind of looking into this, that what is actually the value of the most positive feelings or the cost of the most negative feelings. So fact-based decision-making, even though we talk about kind of a soft topic of CX, but in the end, it's very, very kind of hard fact-based thinking.
I completely agree, Harri. I think it's a great thing to do. Sometimes we get so, I'm not saying this is Stockmann, but globally, people get so obsessed with the score, it then becomes very difficult to determine what does that score mean in hard numbers. And as we know, NPS is a very divisive metric. But what people need to get their heads around with NPS is that it can tell you lots of things, and ultimately, if you really genuinely have a desire to drive improvement to the experience, don't worry about the score itself. Focus on, for example, the proportion of detractors. anyone that's scoring a 6 or below, how many people are scoring you a 6 or below, and why are they scoring you a 6 or below? I see an increasing number of organizations who have stopped reporting NPS and are now reporting the proportion of detractors, and their focus is driving that down rather than sort of a potentially artificial number that doesn't mean anything to anyone. So I think we've got to be a little bit like businesses have to be as customer experience professionals, flexible and adaptable, and use the facts that are available to us to speak the language of the business leader. But because we can preach to them all we want, but if all they care about are the things that help them to make the connection between what we're doing and business value, that's the language we've got to speak.
Yes, to finalize, I would like to reply to a question that we got here from our Q&A. And I think this one is for Harri. So when you get an insight of some specific topic, how do you make it a part of your prioritization process or processes?
Well, I would say that it depends a little bit on the case. So they would maybe be born in two ways, that either we kind of decide that we want to start looking into something, maybe a new opportunity, maybe some new category that should we expand to it or something. So then we kind of start looking for those insights that would support that decision making. And then it is kind of, it's a project where we have the certain points where we do decisions how to go forward, if we go forward. But kind of the more tricky way maybe is that if we as the insight specialists spot something somewhere, then it depends a little bit on the company. So I always say that it's good to kind of cling on to any decision-making processes that exist already. So if we kind of have some gate model for the development projects, or if we have like the yearly prioritization or quarterly or half a year prioritization of resources or something. So kind of try to map that, what are the points where you can affect, because I have raised last year several topics that no one kind of asked for. And luckily they were kind of taken into consideration in several different kind of ways, but everything was something that we had those processes in place, whether it being yearly planning or adjusting our commercial plan or something like that. So I always try to avoid to create any new processes if those are not needed, or any new kind of this kind of quality control gate kind of things, because then people kind of start thinking that this is something that makes it more difficult or slow. But to kind of inject the insights into any current processes or projects, that's how it usually works the best, based on my experience.
All right, thank you very much. To all the other questions that we got, I think we would not have enough time to go through them. So we'll get back to your questions by email. So no worries about that. I would like to thank you very much for the presence today at our webinar. It has been a great discussion. I think we went through very relevant and through amazing topics. And I would like to thank you all who attended to our webinar. I think we went through very relevant customer experience issues, state of how things are going, clear examples, and very insightful information. So once again, thank you very much, and would like to ask the opportunity to follow us on LinkedIn, so to keep up to date with our customer experience related topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.